Good morning and welcome to Cheche, the show where opinion counts, live on Citizen TV. I'm your host, Udwa Kamimo. Now, the Senate is back on the warpath, this time over claims that the National Assembly is undermining it by legislating on county resource matters. The Senate held a meeting in Mombasa to agree on a common position, which you may have heard bits of from Minority Leader Moses Wetangula. He's our guest today. We also have in the studio Mutegin Jao of Royal Media Services and political analyst and aspiring politician David Makali. They are the Cheche panel. Good morning and welcome to Cheche. First, let's deal with the fact that you've been in the news lately, and that has to do with airplane incidents. In the first instance, you took ill and were rushed to hospital. What happened?
Well, there were two plane incidents. The first one was the so-called ID issue.
Let's start with your health, because quite a few people are happy to see you, but you were telling us that some people are not.
I have been out of the country for about a week. I arrived back in the country on Thursday. We had gone to Morocco with the Speaker of the Senate and Senator Wamatangi. We came back on Thursday. I arrived at 4 p.m., went to the Senate, did my day's routine work, stayed in the office up to about 11, went home, and in the morning I left to go to Bungoma because I had been informed the Deputy President was visiting the county to conduct some harambe, which we'll talk about later. The plane flew Nairobi, Eldoret, Kisumu. From Eldoret to Kisumu, about 5 minutes to landing, I started feeling some nausea. I started feeling like I was running out of breath. I alerted the stewardess on the plane. She asked if there was a doctor on the flight. It's a young doctor who came forward, and I want to thank him. I didn't pick his name, who gave me some quick first aid because I was gasping for breath and I was really feeling uncomfortable. He loosened my clothes, took off my shoes, my socks, my belt, my watch, and gave me some very good first aid that brought me back to normality. From there, we landed. Paul Otuoma, the MP for Funyula, who was with me, had asked the pilot to look for an ambulance in case my situation became worse. And upon landing, everybody left the plane. Then we walked out with Otuoma. I was taken to the ambulance and taken to Aga Khan Hospital, where I was admitted for 3 hours. They carried out extensive tests on my blood pressure levels, my sugar levels, my hemoglobin count, my heartbeat, my everything. And they told me eventually that I was suffering from fatigue and released me to go home. And that's where we are. So for those of my friends who showed great concern, my brother Raila, who came and sat in the hospital ward with me for 3 hours, Bone Khalwale, who came and sat with me for 3 hours, Otuoma, everybody who tweeted, who sent SMSs, my party MPs who drove all the way from wherever they were to Kisumu, MCAs from as far as Kapenguria who drove to Kisumu, and all the people of Kenya who wished me well. I want to say thank you. As you can see, I'm in one piece and I'm okay. And I also want to tell those who maliciously tweeted wishing me to rest in eternal peace that I'm still here and will still be here for a long time.
There are some people who have written negative things about you, not about health, but other things which I cannot talk about. What do you say about that?
I have given you an account of how I arrived in the country and how I ended up in Kisumu. I've seen those malicious write-ups, and again, my lawyers have taken a publication called The Post to court, and there is some reckless ethnic-based politician who posted on the tweet that he wished me to rest in eternal peace. That I leave it to God to judge him.
Okay, so that's the most recent airplane incident, and then of course we had the prior airplane incident.
The ID one was most bizarre because we left Senate with the Speaker and several senators, including the Senator for Kajiado, for Nyeri, for Mandera, and others, to go to Mombasa for a workshop. We arrived at the airport. I had released my car to go ahead of me with my briefcase, which unfortunately carried my ID. And upon clearance to go to the plane, we entered the plane and sat, because I had explained to these ladies that my ID was not available. We went to the plane, was sat down, then some lady came and confronted me and ordered me to leave the plane because she had not seen my ID. I told her that I had explained to them I didn't have an ID, but I showed them other forms of identification, including my airline platinum card, my parliamentary health card that bears my photograph, my bank cards, and everything else, but she couldn't hear anything. She kept on shouting at me, telling me, Honorable Wetangula, you must leave. I said, now, if you are shouting my name, it means you know me. So what further identification do you want from me? Yeah. In any event, we all know that an identity card is not a travel document in this country. Because if it was, how would children travel who don't have IDs? How would foreigners travel? If you are talking of any form of identification, then you can produce any document that can identify you. In any case, you seek to identify somebody if you are not sure who they are. Because if you know that this is Muteki Njau, even in the bank where you go, I'm sure with the regular visits, they get to know you and they do not demand to see your ID every day. But that's something behind me. I don't know what motive the airline had. I don't know what motive this middle-aged lady who confronted us.
Was it the airline or the individual?
I believe the individual, but she represents the airline and there's vicarious responsibility.
But given the current climate around security and tightened measures, do you not feel that as a politician, somebody aspiring to be president of this country, you've explained the circumstances, but can you not understand that in this instance they were trying to enforce their own regulations and somehow this escalated, you know, beyond...
I didn't decline to identify myself.
Right.
The Speaker of the Senate stepped forward and said, if you want additional identification, I am the Speaker of the Senate. The Speaker of the National Assembly, Justin Muturi, who was with us, who was my classmate and at some point in our education, my roommate, stepped forward and said, this is somebody we know. Mutai Kagwe stepped forward and said the same thing. The pilot of the aircraft, when this lady was shouting at me, came out and said, I was a classmate to the senator's son-in-law. If you want additional identification, I can identify him. So I do not believe that it is just a question of ID. I have no difficulty with people being identified because it could be a security issue, it could be a matter of procedure, whatever it means, because you don't know who is who in terms of securing ourselves. But when you identify yourself to the extent that I did, and somebody persists, then you can see that there could be a motive beyond identification.
So you could not establish the motive, and up to now?
I didn't bother to altercate with this young girl because it was not necessary for me. In fact, it's the senators who are with me who spoke. I never uttered a word to this lady other than showing my documents. The next day, Titus Naikuni called me and said, we're sorry about what happened. This is not our policy to embarrass our customers. In any event, if you hold a platinum card on an airline, that is the highest level of commitment to that airline. And it carries every biodata of yourself. If you log it in, you'll see even the picture of the holder of the card, if the picture is what you're looking for.
Okay. So, you know, that's dealt with. Let's come to the issue of the Senate, where you sit. You're the minority leader. And this recent upset with the National Assembly. And the National Assembly has responded to the upset by calling you all crybabies. So let's get to, you know, the root of the upset. Why are you crying foul?
First of all, what I don't want is to appear to be sparring with the National Assembly, because I don't want to do that. If you read the new Constitution 2010, the drafters of the Constitution, I believe, were very clear in the philosophy behind the creation of the two-chamber parliament. Article 110(3) says in very clear terms that before any bill, without exception, is presented to any house, the two speakers of the two houses have to meet and make a decision as to whether the bill concerns counties or not. In which case then you can decide whether the bill will be processed between the two houses or in one house. So that even if a bill concerns counties, it can originate from the Senate but must end up in the National Assembly and vice versa. Now, what has been happening? The Senate has been following the Constitution to the letter. Every single bill that has come to the Senate floor, our Speaker has dutifully invited his brother from the lower house and determined its relevance to the counties. And we have correspondence to this effect. As to the bills emanating from the National Assembly, and this we have been seeing a conspiracy between the executive, the Office of the Attorney General, and the National Assembly itself. We can count 46 bills that have been placed before the National Assembly without total disregard to the mandatory provisions of Article 110(3).
With total disregard, you mean?
Total disregard. Processed and taken to the President for assent, including the Division of Revenue Bill of 2013. Division of Revenue concerns counties even much more than any other bill. It was still processed at the National Assembly, taken to the President and assented to. At that time, the Senate went to the Supreme Court for an advisory opinion, and the Supreme Court advised that that was wrong. Every bill in accordance with 110(3) must be placed before the two speakers. We have been following this and communicating and engaging in conversations diplomatically to see whether this can be resolved. It doesn't seem to be working.
What is
we
the
have
motivation?
seen
Why is Parliament, the National Assembly, doing that? What do they gain by doing that?
To me, they gain nothing.
So why do they do it? Because
To me, they gain nothing.
childish.
To me, it just looks like it is the continuation of the impunity that the new constitution came to cure. People acting in total disregard of written laws and including the constitution itself that creates institutions.
Let's go back to the Constitution and the fact that the speakers have to meet.
Yes.
Has the Speaker of the Senate tried to engage the Speaker of the National Assembly on these 46 bills that you reference, and the Speaker of the National Assembly has refused to have the meeting and has refused to engage?
In fact, beyond the 46 bills, there are another 21 bills that attempts to comply with the 110(3) have been done, where our Speaker notifies the Speaker of the National Assembly, and the Speaker of the National Assembly, without even meeting with our Speaker, just casually writes back and says, in my considered opinion, this bill does not concern counties. But that is not about the opinion of one Speaker. It's an opinion shared by two speakers who must meet under 110(3).
So the point you're making is that the Speaker of the Senate has attempted to engage the Speaker of the National Assembly, and those efforts to reach out have been pretty much
just
snubbed.
ignored, snubbed.
Maybe the Speaker of the National Assembly is a very busy person. Unlike the Speaker of the Senate.
You can be very busy, but you cannot be too busy for the law. You cannot be too busy for the Constitution. The Constitution is very clear. Let me give you an example, panel. We have had a bill on the police, trying to restructure the police, and we in the Senate say the police work in counties. Their work directly involves counties. You cannot take a bill on the police to the National Assembly and pretend that you have covered everybody. The Senate is there to protect, to defend the interests of counties in every respect. So legislation that has far-reaching effects and consequences on the structure, management, and the future of devolution and counties must have an input from the Senate. Take the bill on water. There's a bill in the National Assembly on water where the Speaker has written to our Speaker telling him that it doesn't concern counties. Who can imagine that water in this country doesn't concern counties? Ndakaine Dam that supplies water to Nairobi is in Murang'a County. Nairobi can't walk to Ndakaine and draw water without engaging Murang'a County. And many others. There is a bill on mining that we probably need to talk about at some length. This bill, the genesis of this bill, was the Senate. A nominated Senator, Dr. Agnes Zani, brought a motion to the Senate. It was passed. We gave her authority to create a committee, and we empowered this committee to visit some of the most developed and modern legislations we know of on mining, like Australia. I'm sure if you Google, you'll be told Perth is the mining capital of the world. They went to Perth, they went to Botswana, which has the best mining laws in Africa. They went everywhere. They drafted a bill that is before the Senate. Somebody somewhere picked the same bill, plagiarized it, and took it to the National Assembly. Our Speaker wrote to the Speaker of the National Assembly and reminded him that this bill, one, it was before the Senate, and two, it concerns counties and must be dealt with by both houses. The Speaker of the National Assembly wrote to our Speaker, telling him that in his opinion it didn't concern counties. They passed the bill, and we know for sure that the bill was on the way to the President for assent. If you watch news, last week, the Deputy President was seen with Najib Balala making a very profound statement that the mining bill will be assented to by the President regardless. And it was carried very widely, including your media houses. And we in the Senate said, no, wait a minute. We can't have business as usual if this is what is going on. We must abide by the law. We must respect the Constitution. And we are not going to engage in a shouting match with the National Assembly. We will go back to the Supreme Court for an advisory opinion. And the advisory opinion will include challenging now the constitutionality of the 46 bills that have been processed and ascended to by the President with total disregard to Article 110(3).
David.
It would seem to me that this is not even a matter to seek the advisory opinion of the Supreme Court, but rather to get the court to issue an injunction to a process that's proceeding. Why aren't you taking the shorter route? Because
we will do two things.
Take forever.
I agree with you, David, and the majority in the Senate feel that part of our prayers will be to declare the 46 bills unconstitutional because they have not complied with the Constitution. And let me tell you, one may even say that perhaps if those bills came from the Senate to the National Assembly or vice versa, there will be little change. But that is not the issue. The issue is the Constitution says you must take this process. And even one sentence or a comma, you remember the famous Amos Wako's not more than or not less than,
yes,
that would have changed the complete structure of an electoral process. That can mean a lot for a country. Imagine a situation, Woodwork, where mining, all mines are based in counties. All mines are on land, including a simple thing like the sand that builds Nairobi and all the towns around. These are mines from the county of Makueni. How can you say that doesn't concern counties? Look at a county like Taita Taveta, where 60% of the county is Tsavo National Park. 25% are ranches owned by 3 families.
Isn't it?
What is left?
Supposing somebody
Yes.
was to argue
Yes.
that those particular, the subjects of that legislation, of those legislation,
Yes.
are issues of national government, nothing to do with the counties. For example, minerals
Yes.
are under the national government, not managed by counties.
If you
So then,
if you read
it's
the
the business of the National Assembly to legislate on that particular aspect.
If you read the Constitution selectively, or you go to Schedule 4, you can reach that conclusion. But if you look through the Constitution, all relevant clauses, go to the clauses on land, for example. A mineral is not based on a tree. Every mineral is embedded in land. Land is largely in the hands of counties. Now, for you to go there and mine, even if it's a national function,
Is that the case?
let me finish. For you to go there and mine,
Yes.
even if it's a national function, you'll have to involve the county government in planning, in environmental management, in relocation of people if they have to, in compensation, in many ways. Infrastructure. You'll need roads, you'll need water, you'll need security, you'll need housing. All these are a total component that go with mining. Mining is not about a minister sitting in Nairobi and issuing or revoking licenses. It's a whole complex situation that involves people's lives. There are communities that have been custodians of these minerals for ages.
So to be
How do
clear,
you
it
take
seems,
care of them?
let's distill the issue, because
Yes.
it seems that there are a number of issues here. A, that you know, your intellectual resources were plagiarized.
Yes.
In some shape or form. B, that the National Assembly proceeded on the bill, ignoring the fact that both houses needed to consult on this matter as far as it concerns counties. And then 3, that the Deputy President, representing the executive, then went ahead to say, whatever happens, we're passing the bill, whether it
And
comes
we
from the
will assent
Senate,
to it.
whether it comes from the Senate or from the House. That's what we're
Yes.
arguing about here. But are we being a bit too extreme? It sounds, as Mutegi was saying, that there's a lot of immaturity, you know, going on. That a simple phone call to, you know, the National Assembly could have resolved this matter. That whoever plagiarized the bill, if that's what happened, you know, no one has a monopoly on ideas, could have been called, you know, and some sort of harmony established beyond this, you know, to use your words, shouting match that seems to be ensuing.
Before I even answer that question, if you trace back, there was a bill that was drafted by Bone Khalwale, the senator for Kakamega, on emblems and
National flags or something.
flags,
yeah.
yes.
Flags and emblems.
And he brought it to the Senate. While the bill was in second reading at the Senate,
It appeared in the
it
National
appeared in the
Assembly.
National Assembly in exactly the same form and wording. It was rushed through, passed, taken to the president, and assented to, knowing very well there was a bill going on in the Senate. But back to what you have asked, Udwak, I don't know if it's immaturity. I want to think it's impunity much more than immaturity, because when people want to act recklessly, and in law we call people who are reckless, when they know what they are doing, they know the consequences, and they don't care. And this is what we are seeing, because our speaker has been very prudent in managing the affairs. We can't say the same of the National Assembly.
Of your classmate.
Because
And your roommate.
unfortunately, yes. Because even on this mining bill that we are talking about, I saw yesterday the Deputy Speaker in the National Assembly saying that the Senate is shouting and crying when the bill is still here and we have not sent it for assent. But our Speaker has a letter from his counterpart telling him that this bill doesn't concern counties, meaning it will not come to the Senate. So the Senate is not just talking about things in the abstract. And if you listen to the Senate and our resolutions in Mombasa, we did not even address the issue of whether the National Assembly is misconducting itself or not. We simply said the law must be obeyed, the Constitution must be followed. And what is our recourse? The 46 bills must be declared unconstitutional by going to the court in the manner that David said. And where we have further advice or opinion required from the Supreme Court, as is required under the Constitution, we'll seek for it.
It seems to me that going by your description of what can concern a county or counties,
Yes.
nothing under the sun will pass in the National Assembly that does not affect the counties. Every legislation will have a certain element that touches on the county, land, people, resources, infrastructure. Something is going
But
to happen.
bear in mind, David, that the
Yeah.
Constitution also says that these bills can originate from either house.
Either house.
Yes.
And what seems troubling at this point, Senator, is that there's a lot of bellicose and belligerent language coming from both houses. You know, there's a veiled threat, I think, coming from the National Assembly, who needs the Senate. And then I think there was a response from the Senate, we're here, we're not going anywhere. And so rather than legislating on matters that concern Kenyans, you now seem to be trying to assert yourselves, you know, and teach each other a lesson. And so as the proverb goes, it's the grass that is going to be disturbed as these two elephants are fighting.
Well, the late Professor Ali Mazrui said that when elephants fight, the grass suffers. But he also said the grass suffers even more when elephants make love. So it has both ways. But come back to the point that David raised. You know, I started from there, David.
Yes.
The philosophy of the drafters of the Constitution anticipated that. And that's why there's 110.3. That almost everything touches on counties. But it was left to the determination of the houses.
Speakers.
The speakers will sit. And where they disagree, by the way,
Yeah.
there is a further provision in the Constitution that they then form a mediation committee between the two houses to bring their divergent views to the center. Then from there you can
But
move
that would
on.
be at the point when there's a bill already. That's when a mediation committee would be
When
formed,
there is a
not at the
dispute.
point of
But there is a bill,
disagreement.
there is a
There is already
dispute.
a
So
bill.
why is there
Yeah.
no mediation committee?
That is the intransigence you're talking about. That is the bellicose behavior you're talking about. Because I have no doubt that the Senate will be quite happy if the Speaker of the National Assembly says he believes this bill doesn't concern counties. And our Speaker says, I believe this bill concerns counties. Then we form a mediation
Would I hazard
committee.
a guess that
Yes.
perhaps that belligerence you're talking about is stressed from the why if I was Muturi, okay,
Yes.
assuming I can be Muturi,
Which you are not.
would be that the bill that affects the counties flows from the functions of the Senate.
Yes.
What are the functions of the Senate as provided in the Constitution? And the functions which are devolved to the counties in the Constitution. If it touches on those functions and also has the application of the Senate's mandate, then it touches the counties. If it's outside those, that's why I said then it will mean, if we stretch the interpretation broadly, nothing under the sun will not affect the
Remember,
counties.
even the final product of this legislative process, when a bill goes to the President for assent, it is not a bill of the Senate or a bill of the National Assembly. It's a bill of Parliament.
Yes.
And Parliament means both houses. Parliament means the National Assembly and the Senate. And I can tell you, David, for the orderly conduct of legislative programs in the country, for the orderly programs of nurturing and developing devolution that made the people of Kenya vote for this new constitution, you can't wish away counties or their defenders and protectors in the Senate. You have to involve them. You have to involve both houses. In fact, I want to tell you that in my view, and this view is shared by many of my colleagues, we are not struggling to say who initiates legislation. Legislation can be initiated by any house, by any individual, by any organ of government that can find somebody to take to Parliament. Give it an opportunity to be seen and looked at and analyzed by both houses to see whether it affects counties or it is exclusively a matter of the national government. Everything we do is, that's why the Constitution says the county governments and the national government are interdependent.
Right. That point is clear.
Yes.
Let's not belabor it.
Yes.
But going forward now, where do we
Before
stand?
we go forward,
Yes.
you said Agnes Zani formed a committee which went to Australia, South Africa, whatever.
She brought a
Botswana.
motion which was
Yeah.
passed forming a committee.
Then you formed a committee. They
Another
went all over the
committee.
place.
Yes.
Then your bill was plagiarized.
Yes.
What happened to our efforts?
The
She
bill
stopped-
is
she stopped-
before the Senate.
The bill
And
is still
the bill is before the Senate.
the mining bill.
And what the Senate will do, apart from going to court, we are going to debate the bill.
The
We are
Agnes
going to
Zani
pass
bill.
it.
What is it about?
It's mining.
It's a mine.
Mining. We are going to debate the bill.
Yeah.
We are going to pass it.
Yes.
And we will not act like the National Assembly. When we
Send
pass
it
it,
to
we've asked our Speaker to send it to the National Assembly and tell them, in accordance with the Constitution, we have passed this bill. Please have a look at it as the Constitution
Okay.
requires.
what-
So,
you
so
anticipate
let's
will
just
happen?
understand this,
Yes.
because you've been on the news, you've talked about going to the Supreme Court, you want the 46 other pieces of legislation declared unconstitutional. So in addition to, are you telling us that in addition to carrying on the debate on the mining bill that originated from the Senate, that you will still go to the Supreme Court and to have whatever process is taking place in the National Assembly stopped?
Absolutely. Because the bill that is originated from the Senate will follow the steps and the procedures set out in the Constitution.
Is there any...
We have already, our Speaker has already communicated with the Speaker of the National Assembly in accordance with 110.3, which he didn't.
Yeah.
Is there anything the National Assembly could do to mitigate? Yes, to
I heard yesterday the Deputy Speaker, which I think is a retraction, saying that the bill will be sent to the Senate.
Yes.
If they do, then they will be complying with the law. In fact, the majority leader in the Senate, Kindiki, wrote to the Attorney General drawing his attention to the 46 bills and this particular mining bill, which, as the Senate is saying, if there is any bill that will be the spine breaker, it will be this bill. Because we believe, and very strongly so, David, that given the mineral resources that are under discovery in this country, from uranium down to sand, everything, the national government wants to sit in Nairobi and control the mining sector with total disregard to the interests of the counties, the people in the counties, the custodians of the land on which the minerals have been all these years, and the proceeds coming therefore, so that we can sit and have a minister in Nairobi concessioning miners and sending them to Turkana or wherever to go and do whatever they want without caring whether there are people living there or not.
Is that what the bill is saying? Have you seen the bill that the president is supposed to get from the National Assembly to make...
He just told us it's a copy.
It's a plagiarized bill.
Yeah.
So is that what it's saying? That the minister will be doing that?
You see, the bill has been passed now. Yes. We don't know what amendments the National Assembly is going to do. I'm giving you a scenario of the likely things to happen. Yeah. Yes. And you know very well how people sat in Nairobi and allocated themselves land in Taita Taveta, in Lamu, everywhere, without caring whether there were people living on those lands or not. These are things we want to stop. These are things we want to check.
Okay, we'll take a break now. Stay with us here. We're on Cheche. We're live on Citizen TV, and we'll be back with Senate Minority Leader and Court Principal Moses Wetangula after the break. When we come back, has Court's referendum push lost its steam? Tell us what you think on our SMS number, which is 22422, or you can tweet us. Our handle is @Cheche_TV.